Hello, and welcome to the New Rules of Sex Summit, your sexual re-education. My name is Dr. Lauren Brem, and I am here today with Sofia Sundari, international Tantra teacher, author, thought leader, the founder of the Priestess School, and a facilitator of courses on Tantric and Taoist sexuality. Welcome, Sofia.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I understand we're welcoming you from Moscow today.
Yes, that's where I am right now.
Yes, I love it. Thank you for making time to talk with us. So I want to dive right in and talk about yoni massage, because in my experience of doing Tantra, it was one of the most profound experiences that I had ever had. And I think that more people should understand it. So could you start by just talking about, what that is and how it can take someone from frigidity to ecstasy, from numbness to pleasure?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I do want to make a distinction first that because there's a lot of kind of conversation around Tantra these days, and many people think that Tantra is sex or sexual practice or yoni massage, and actually Tantra is something that includes that, yet is not limited to sexual practices at all. Actually, sexual practices constitute only like 10% of Tantra, and it's actually a whole way of living. It's a lifestyle that is all inclusive and includes sexuality as well. But because sexuality and sexual education is so lacking in the world, so it's like now we mostly know Tantra because of those 10% of it. And yet, what Tantra offers us, I find, is a whole reframing of existence, really. It's like a shift of paradigm. So within that, we also shift the paradigm that we have around sexuality and pleasure. Yes, I felt like making the side note here because there's so much confusion around this, I find.
Yeah, well then maybe before you talk about yoni massage, then can you talk about Tantra as a lifestyle and what that reframed paradigm is?
Yeah, well, it's pretty incredible, many people come to my courses for sexual empowerment, or they feel like I'm doing something juicy. They want to create more radiance in their life, or they want to feel more connected. We're doing, and they're like, no, wow, like, yeah, we are liberating, we are releasing lots of shame around sexuality, we are doing full-on practices which probably most people could never imagine doing, because they're just very direct and very hands-on. Sometimes we do massages and things like this, and then I ask, is it about sex? And they're like, no, it's so not about sex, or at least not only about sex, because it's like a side effect. We do get all those amazing orgasms and amazing lovemaking and amazing expansion of consciousness through lovemaking and sexuality, but it's so not about this. So what it is about is really about living in communion with spirit, living with that meditative approach to life, where every moment is seen as a portal, as a gateway to our true self. And in the modern world, I find that it's the most suitable path actually for the modern world, because it does not separate spirit and life. So we learn to see the spirit, or our true self, or the universe, the expression of the universe in life, in every single moment, and see that each and every moment can actually lead us to very great depth. Yeah, so
that really touched me when you said that. Like, it just immediately made me want to cry. Just how you talk about it, I can feel that you really embody that living in communion with spirit, and how that translates through every area of life, including through sexuality. You said something really interesting about the releasing shame that people experience as they do this work. Can you talk more about what that process looks like?
Yeah, It's huge because we like in Tantra we don't shy away from anything. So emotions are a big piece that we have very little awareness and what to do about them. Like normally we have emotions and then we either cry or we find someone to blame for us feeling a bit bad, or find someone to express our anger towards or something like this. Well, in Tantra we see that emotions are energy, and this energy is not necessarily about expressing it to someone, but it's about feeling it. And shame is that energy which is probably the most challenging because it does not really move naturally. Like a sadness, we can cry, we can move it, we can express it, and actually we can have experience a huge heart opening through sadness. Or anger, it's such a potent, such a fiery, intense energy of creation. So it can be used and directed to creative projects, for example. But shame is something that paralyzes, like has a tendency to paralyze. It's like it says, it tells us I am wrong. It's not that I did something. It's like I am wrong. My very essence is wrong. And then of course, sexuality is the area where we carry so much shame because at the age of 3 or 4, it said that children are. How old is your child?
3.
3. Okay, so that's the time when they start getting interested in their sexuality. So they start exploring, maybe start touching themselves, or showing each other their genitals. And normally, what happens is that when adults see us doing that, they shame us, right? They tell us, "Oh, your hand's gonna fall off," or something like this, or "You're a dirty boy or dirty girl." And that's not really leaving a positive imprint about sexuality for us. So first impression, shame, then they keep going through life, and then they keep getting more and more layers of that shame. And sexuality is something that it's like it defines our essence as humans, right? We are here talking right now because someone had sex at some point, my parents, your parents, and that's what brings us here. And then when we see that as something dirty, as something shameful, that just kind of confuses our whole system, because it's the very root of our being, and then that is already wrong. So basically everything else on top of that is going to be wrong as well. So as we do this work, releasing shame is huge, because it's just, we don't even need to do something like major, like crazy actions, I don't know, running naked on the street or something like this, but actually understanding that our nature is erotic, that it's just natural to be soft and open and relaxed, and this is erotic. Then we just start seeing things that are like expression of intimacy. We stop seeing it as something that has to be done behind closed curtains only and discussed only in secret or talked about. So that's what people experience in my trainings. I see that a lot, and it's like it just brings a certain a real depth of bigger sense of freedom in life, in all areas of life. Because if our base is fine, and that's where our creative energy is, that's where that energy of life is within ourselves, then if we make peace with that, then everything else in life kind of becomes a lot more simple, actually.
Yeah,
free.
Absolutely. And in the same way that you said Tantra isn't about sex, it's this mindset. Sexuality, we so often, when we think of sex, we think of the acts of sex, and yet sexuality is our essence, like you said. And so it defines us as humans. So if there's all this shame kind of tucked away in it, and this idea that it's wrong, I think it's really interesting how powerful it is for someone like you to hold space, or for a summit to just have people talking about sex like it's the most natural and healthy, because that's what our parents should have done for us as children, to say, oh yeah, that's pleasurable and wonderful, and your body is beautiful, and express it with consent with other people, and then that little fire would stay lit, and it would grow, and it would find its way. And instead it's just stomped out by people that are so uncomfortable with sex and what might happen with it, and with their own sexual desires. So it's a fascinating journey that we're on at this, coming out of this culture of so much suppression of sex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So could you, going back to, yoni massage, some people might not even know what that word is, but can you talk about the role that does play for people in Tantra?
Yeah, so yoni is basically, it's a word that is used to refer to female genitalia, and which means sacred temple or the source, the source of existence, we can say. So, already starting with that already kind of brings a paradigm shift, that I was talking in the beginning, where usually, like, even, if we remember how were we calling our vagina when we were growing up, like most women have some kind of funny words that they were calling her.
Mm-hmm.
And here it's an invitation from the tantric, from that ancient Sanskrit language, to actually treat your vagina as a holy temple. Like that's already pretty deep. It's like, okay, that's a place of sacredness. Yes, that's a gate of the universe. We can also say that's a gate that through which we all came here. There's nothing dirty, nothing stinky, nothing that needs to be changed or improved about that beautiful place. So then the massage obviously means that we are massaging the vulva outside and inside, and there are different ways to do that, and there's a way to receive it from a therapist, or there's a way to receive it from a partner, or there's also ways to practice self yoni massage. And actually I think that every woman should do that. Every woman should do that, at least, from time to time, or even, with my students, sometimes we go on cycles, like you take a cycle of like 21 days when you really commit to a certain practice and you agree with yourself that I'm going to be doing it either every day or maybe 3 times a week or something like this. And it brings amazing results, because what happens in our, again, with like what we touched upon already, with the shame, we create a certain disconnect, and we start living from belly button upwards. So what is below is not holy, and what is above is kind of holy. And that's coming from kind of modern way of spirituality, and what is seen and what is not seen type thing. But when we choose to live holistically and develop healthy sexuality, which is not in excess and you're just throwing it off and it's not repressed, but that healthy sexuality and that fullness of life, that's the way to it, when we really embrace ourselves holistically. Then we discover that, yes, first of all, there is a disconnect. And actually, I believe that most women's vaginas have to undergo a certain amount of healing, even if we haven't been abused directly or traumatized in this life, although that's really, really rare, actually. Because we did, most of us experience, for example, being entered prematurely, and that already creates a certain impact. That happens even in the most loving relationships, actually. But we learn to honor that sacred temple, and even in the yoni massage, it's not that you just like massaging, like, I don't know, your hand or something, or your head. How I always recommend to practice it is by knowing that the yoni is really open and really welcoming the touch inside. So there's lots of things to explore on the outside, and a lot of ways to activate and de-armor. Like, there's also this process called de-armoring, so we're removing that armor, so like going into it and also inviting the opening to happen. But what is really important is, with the internal work, is that it's a real yes. Yeah, like with women, I find also it's so crucial, this connection with the vagina. Like, I spent a few years, I felt like going around the world and just teaching women about the power of their vagina, and that's our compass, that's our receptacle, that's where we really can feel things. We can feel a yes and a no, and that's the source of our intuition, really. And so when we are approaching the yoni, like, we should never go direct, like just shuffle the fingers in and just do the thing inside. No, it should be like that whole body process, and even the heart should be involved in that, and even the spirit. and just really seeing that already what is healing is giving a woman or giving yourself a permission to only say yes when you're ready, on like truly willing that, inviting that penetration. And a way to do it, to prepare, is to really massage the whole body first and really activate the breasts, because the breasts are also extension of our heart. So as we open the heart, also the yoni tends to open naturally. And then you see that it's like almost like a miracle. Then suddenly the yoni opens and actually is welcoming. And then even what is really powerful is just to stay at the entrance. Even when you receive the yes, to just stay, hold the finger at the entrance and wait. And wait until you actually feel that she is pulling the finger in. Yeah, and so now I'm speaking about fingers, but there's also a way to massage with a dildo, and also can be powerful. But what I don't recommend is a vibrator, for example. The vibration is too strong, and it tends to desensitize us in the long run.
Yeah, you talk about entering prematurely, and I think a lot of men and women probably don't know what you're talking about. So maybe could you go more into the specifics of what?
Yeah, so I find that, like, you know, how I was just describing, that only when like really the whole body is open, and that's how feminine sexual energy moves. Actually, it's very different to male. And what we learn now, the sort of sexual education that we have, is coming from porn. And porn is representing nothing but, I mean, first of all, it's just a very small percentage of what's possible in sex. And secondly, it's a totally male type of sexuality. It's you know, on quick arousal, quick stimulation, quick release, and going direct into the sexual organs. Feminine sexuality doesn't work like this. It works more like from the outside, from the, you know, limbs and the breast and the throat, and then the energy flows to the center, to the yoni. With men, it's the opposite. You know, it's first like his penis needs to be activated, then his heart will start opening and energy starts flowing. With us, it's the opposite. Our vagina will never really truly open unless our heart is open. And so what happens usually with women is like, we think, okay, well, he's hard, so we have to go for it. And even there might be a lot of love in the relationship and a lot of connection, but just like, because a woman does not really, she's never been educated to express her desires usually, you know. Also, I mean, with men also that can be the case, but normally we just kind of have some kind of idea how sex should be done, and then we go with it. Okay, he's hard, I'm wet, okay, let's do it. And even actually the wetness is not a sign of being ready. A real sign of being ready is like when there's a real softness and a real calling. And as I was saying before, the yoni actually starts actually sucking the pulling in. Exactly. Yeah, so that's something I really want to raise awareness about. And once it is done, and you know, sometimes if women introduce that, or you know, in a partnership, then men will go like, oh, but why? Like, I want to go for it, and so maybe she never opens. So what to do? And then it's like, yeah, then we just don't have sex, penetrative sex, because there are so many other ways to make love. And that's also, it needs to be understood from men that it's not a rejection, because they also feel like they're it's not a rejection when we say that the yoni is not ready to welcome that cock. It's not a rejection, but it's more like a woman is taking care of herself. It's like she knows that if she actually goes into penetrative sex too early, she's actually depriving both herself and her partner from the greatest pleasure. Because if we start before she is ready, then she's never going to experience that degree of pleasure of which she actually is truly, that she designed to experience. And then she also takes the man or her partner on that ride with her.
So would you recommend that if a woman, so if she's having an experience, either there isn't the yes and the welcoming, or she's been having a sexual experience for a while and then the yes is no longer a yes because she's tired or she's done. I think a lot of women feel that guilt of, well, I need for my partner to finish. I need to help them finish. I already had an orgasm, they haven't. What do you recommend that women do in that moment to honor their truth while still taking care of their partners? Or, what would you say to that?
Yeah, great question. I'm sure many could relate to that. And here again, the paradigm shift comes in, where it's not necessarily about the solution to the specific problem, but reframing sex as a whole and understanding that, we just need to release the goal-oriented mentality around it, Otherwise, we're just kind of stuck in a certain mechanic process, just to arrive to that peak 5 seconds, pleasurable experience and then go to bed or something like this. Where actually, and there's so much to say about this, because actually when this whole ejaculation thing, most men think that that's the only way for them to orgasm, and actually orgasm and ejaculation are two separate things. So when we release that goal of orgasm, the peak orgasm, we are not actually denying ourselves orgasms. We actually are opening to way deeper orgasm and way deeper pleasure, because we focus rather on connection and intimacy between partners, between us, and not on a certain goal in future, be it in 5 minutes or in half an hour. And then what also I find that is important in sex is it's never about one person. If you do self-pleasure, then that's your right? But if we are together, then it's never about one or the other. It's actually about the common experience that we are creating. So if one is not willing, if one feels complete, I mean, there are other ways to connect. You don't need to just stop this abruptly. Like, okay, I'm done. Sometimes women would go, oh, it's hurting, I feel some burning in my vagina, or I feel something wrong, or I'm in my head. Yeah, then you cannot really connect, but you can change things around. Yeah, you can slow down, you can stay together, you can breathe together, you can separate the genitals and keep making love. Or even if a man lost erection, you can still stay together and actually still stay in that connection with the genitals and keep making love, but in a different way, or just find other ways to be intimate. But it's really about a shift of that focus from that goal-oriented thing to, okay, what is here now? How can we deepen into intimacy? How can we open each other up right now?
And if you're with a male partner that says that doesn't have that paradigm and says, but I need to come because I need to ejaculate, or I can't do it myself, I need you to do it. What words can you empower women with in those moments to navigate? Maybe they're with a new partner, or maybe it's a partner of 20 years and they're feeling pressured to do something. What's another way to navigate that?
Yeah, well, this is very delicate, and of course, it's not just like I mean, maybe you will get some ideas, or if that happens tomorrow or something like this. But I find that it's quite a subject where we need to see, are we actually willing to be the one in the position to educate the partner? Are you really want to be the teacher? And maybe you can be doing that, but then you need to see, so it's balanced, so you don't just become the teacher in the relationship, then, because then it's a bit uncomfortable actually for a relationship. But there is a way to have a conversation outside of preferably that sexual encounter, a way to sit together, have that interaction, and explain, I don't know, how the feminine body functions, what do you need, why do you want to make love, and explore together. He can share why he wants to connect, you can share. But the best way is actually to have a third person who is teaching him all that stuff. So it removes, even if you know all that, even in my circle sometimes it happens that women would send their partner to actually another woman, so she explains, so she educates him, and then he comes back and practices it with her. So then the pressure is released, and it's like, okay, that's there's another authority to kind of trust.
Yeah.
Maybe for women watching this, maybe you can show this interview to your partner, and then it would make more sense to him.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
Yeah, and I find also that we just. yeah, it was kindness, you know, with understanding that it's not that he is so self-obsessed that he wants that, but just because he doesn't know any other way. He never been educated about any other way. So it's normal that in the beginning there might be resistance, because it's like, oh, what's that? But some men are actually very, very open, because also their pleasure will be greater if the woman's pleasure is really big, because it's always women who actually facilitate the biggest orgasms for men. But again, it's like it takes an understanding that actually
Oop, we got cut off for a sec, but you're back. Yes, thank you for speaking to all of that. And I think it's such an important reminder that, you know, the only images we get of sex are porn or the movies. And so it just looks like it's so fluid and they just fall into bed and, you know, there's some kissing and the genitals connect and everybody orgasms and it's great. But there's actually like stopping and talking and restarting and, you know, negotiating and educating about your own body, or, you know, there's so much that goes on. And I think it's really important to talk about that side of sex too. And how we do it so that when you find yourself in those situations, because I even still find myself with new partners, with everything I know about sexuality, sometimes in a situation where I'm like, what do I do now? You know, and life just is always presenting you with new things. And the more we share how we navigate and find solutions or shift our thinking or educate our partners, it gives others tools in those same situations.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about, you touched on it at the beginning, how, as you know, and throughout, how as the heart opens, the yoni opens, how doing this work liberates orgasms, makes them more pleasurable. It's not the goal of improving orgasms, but really doing this type of work and this type of paradigm shift. I wonder if you could just talk a little bit more about our orgasmic potential, because I think for a lot of people, it's just kind of a muscle spasm and like a little bit of pleasure, and that's maybe all they know. Or so could you talk about what we're really capable of pleasure-wise?
Oh, yes. I wrote a book about it. Probably, you know, it's a best-selling book, Liberation into Orgasm. It's called Liberation into Orgasm. Yeah, basically, and actually people report that as they read it, they experience new forms of orgasm, which is beautiful. And yeah, there's a lot to say about this. You know, for one, is that most women never experienced vaginal orgasm. Some women never experienced clitoral orgasm, but generally it's tends to be like the easiest one women have. So just like it's like a stimulation against pressure and then a release. And then it's like a few seconds of that kind of excitement, and normally it comes with a going down of energy. So that actually comes with a bit of a loss of energy, and it's not really the best way to orgasm and the best way to experience pleasure. Then there are different forms of orgasm that are actually originating from the vagina. Also there's also anal orgasm, and also there's breast orgasm, there's also throat orgasm, for example, and full body orgasm. So all those different types, they're accessible to absolutely everyone. Those internal vaginal orgasms, sometimes they come together with that squirting, you know, or that liquid coming out. It's actually in Tantra, it's said to be really, really sacred liquid, because it's nothing but expression of sexual energy, because the amounts of it can be incredible. And you know, in medicine they say it's a release of the gland, the liquid from a gland. But you know, imagine a gland and how much liquid it can as amrita or kalas. So yeah, it's really, really magical. and then also there is a way to orgasm from a cervix. So cervix is that neck of the uterus, and these are also absolutely incredible orgasms that can really change someone's life. And even, you know, people experience shift of personality. You know, all of a sudden a very timid and shy person starts like yelling like wild, not caring about neighbors or anything like that. Yeah. So that sometimes the cervical orgasms. And then also anal orgasm, which requires anal penetration, which you know, either with fingers or with a penis or a dildo. And for many people, it's a big taboo subject as well. And yet, that's also an amazing area for us to relax and to enjoy, because it also has this amazing capacity to help us with any kind of control issues. You know, and some people kind of have this tendency to be very, very controlling. And, you know, there's also this phrase that says anal retentive personality. So it's very much linked with anus, because normally, even now, if you check, very likely that the anus is kind of clenched and tight. And so it's a habit that we can develop to constantly relax the whole pelvic floor and the anus. And that already brings big benefits, both in terms of sexuality and just in our life. And then I mean, that's, you know, to develop all that and that relaxation and that awareness of the genitals. Of course, the massage is amazing, and also for men and for women to really learn to bring their awareness in their genitals, you know, because usually we are like in the head or fantasizing or imagining, or even, you know, with the kind of all the fancy kind of breathing techniques and stuff like this, you can also get too heady with all of it. So actually, the game changer is to really learn to embody ourselves and to be in those genitals. That opens new pathways of pleasure, because we cannot really orgasm if we're not there. So that's really the key, you know, the presence and embodiment. Yeah, and then those full body orgasms, which yeah, I mean, sometimes it's kind of mixture of everything. It's like just there's just all this pleasure just moving through. And the full body orgasms, they can happen in complete stillness. You know, sometimes it's like your body becomes so electric and so activated, so you can be just totally still by yourself or with a partner, and then you can just feel all these incredible things going on. And it comes with big expansion of consciousness as well. And to me, you know, when I speak about orgasms, I find that ultimately an orgasm is that state of connectedness, that really state of like this real union, that state of big expansion, and it's actually our natural state. And I believe that if we were not blocking it, we would be constantly in a state of orgasm, because it's our very nature. We are designed that way, but unfortunately we do so many things to stop it, you know, starting from our lifestyle choices, food choices, environment around us, and you know, just the repression of emotions and things like this. All those things are stopping us and limiting us.
Yeah, one of the things I found so fascinating working in alternative medicine is the reciprocal relationship of the body. And the midwives know this, because they know if you're trying to give birth and you're clenching your jaw, that means you're clenching your pelvic floor. And as you were talking about, you know, the tight anus, or, you know, a lot of people have this idea that the pussy or the yoni should be tight, when it's actually not. That as you feel that relaxation, you also feel the relaxation here. And I've had that same, you know, over the years. I remember the first time of really recognizing that when my body was in a yes, it would pull vaginally, it could pull anally, and even the mouth wants to take in, and the back of the throat relaxes like the cervix, and then it becomes a pleasurable zone, and something that I've heard women say, how could that ever be pleasurable, you know, receiving sex here, for example. And when you're in a highly aroused state, you're longing for, and the whole body is opening, and it's incredible.
Absolutely. Even anatomically speaking, the throat looks exactly like the vagina. And there's a very direct correlation, and many women discover actually that they have challenges of speaking, and you know, expressing, because chakra, the area of our expression.
Mm-hmm.
And also the thyroid, most patients with thyroid issues are women, and there's something, there's like a genuinely a blockage that we have, maybe with, I don't know, memories of being burnt on fires for speaking our truth, or whatever, we have in our consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
or subconsciousness. Yeah, and here I notice, with myself, that what happened, and what happens with all my students. Actually, I used to be a lawyer, and it was very hard for me to speak in public. It was very difficult to express. And now sometimes, I have, after all those years of work on my sexuality, I have sometimes hundreds of people in front of me, and I have no trouble whatsoever. And that's definitely here, and as we also, with giving a blowjob, the oral sex, it's like there is an amazing pleasure potential in that. It's like, to be honest, sometimes I think I have more pleasure than my partner when I'm offering a blowjob, because there is that pleasurable zone, and there's even a phenomena that's called throat ejaculation, where there's copious amounts of liquid that can be coming out. So we should not be blocking it, because, and it's not saliva, it actually tastes very sweet, and it's very special, also very mystic type of liquid.
Yeah.
It's said that it comes from a stimulation of a secret secondary chakra there in the back of the throat.
Well, and I wrote a blog once how the Taoists call the saliva the spiritual fluid, and that this production of saliva is really healing, and it's fascinating. Even, we could talk about the properties of female ejaculate, the properties of male ejaculation, the properties of saliva. I mean, these are healing, like very sacred fluids, all of them. And it's just fascinating how we've sort of set them aside as gross, or to be avoided, or to be, it's definitely a paradigm shift when you embrace them as spiritual fluids, allow them to flow, allow them to, to see where they take you. And yeah, it's fascinating. I want to see what one last question I want to ask you here. So for men and women who struggle to connect with desire, what would you say to them would be maybe a step in that direction, or a practice, or a paradigm shift around desire?
Sorry, I missed the first part of your question.
Sure. What would you say to men and women who are struggling with desire? So they say, oh, I have low libido, or I don't desire sex, or maybe, in talking about, we talked about a lot of orgasms sort of from a female perspective, but men as well are capable from orgasming through stimulation of the mouth, the prostate, the full body, the testicles. When the desire is low and the sexuality is in a kind of contracted state, what would you recommend to start to open that up?
Yeah, it's a big subject as well, because it's kind of generally we have that repression of desire, and usually it also comes very unconsciously, because it's like, also in spirituality, it's said to be that you need to transcend your desires and then you will be free, or something like this. Or also, just genuinely, like, with that shame, like feeling like, yeah, I should not desire too much. It's like it's not humble or something. Whatever ideas we have. And Tantra offers a very powerful perspective on that. It says that actually, in order to transcend desires, we actually need to fulfill them, and then they stop bothering us. And I know there are some people that just don't feel the desire. They're like, oh, whatever you want, honey, where you want to eat, oh, just wherever you want. And that's a way of disowning ourselves. That's the way of disowning our power. So I highly recommend people to just find, like, I have even a meditation on that that I recorded, where it's just like an invitation to sit and feel into your belly, because the belly is supposed to be that area that contains the desires. and just sit and be with that belly, be with with anything that arises, and specifically focus on desire. It's like, okay, what would feel nice, what would feel delicious, what would feel pleasurable right now. Oh, and then, you know, don't neglect any small things. And if you have a partner, it's a really cool game that you can play, just sitting together and saying, hey, let's take 10 minutes each and just ask specific things that you want. And then maybe you go like, okay, well, what would feel really nice right now is if you touch me with one finger over here for just 1 minute. Yeah. And then maybe you just touch my lip, or maybe you just look into my eyes for 3 minutes, or maybe massage my back. Like, all of those things, they are valid desires. And then, okay, what would you like sexually speaking? Like, maybe there is a certain position you would like to try, maybe there's a certain fantasy. Yeah. And then also there can be a big fear to offend the partner. Maybe you go like, wow, but what if my fantasy is not something that my partner will approve? Maybe what if I want to have a threesome with his best friend, or you know, maybe, you know, what if I want to do that with her, and for her it's too much, and things like that. And yeah, here it's like, it's important to know that it's really important to activate those desires, to own them, but actually you don't have to fulfill all of them. You know, some desires are actually quite important to fulfill, at least at some point in your life, but know that it's not always possible. It's not always the case. It's not always the right time in your life to do that. But what is really beautiful in couples and just by yourself, but to be really clear and transparent about those desires. Yeah, in case of a couple. And then just knowing that, okay, then hold the, you know, if your partner expresses something and you're like, whoa, where's that? Know that they are practicing. Know that it's their practice. They are just starting to own parts of themselves which were unowned before. And as they step into their power, that benefits not only you, but everyone. The whole world benefits when we step into our power. And our desires have a lot to do with our power. When we can't feel them, I feel it's like it's a really trapped sense of power. So when we give ourselves permission, okay. Also, a big limiting step here is that people associate many things as dirty, or like, oh, but I should not desire that. That's too much. I shouldn't have like animalistic sex. Like, I just need to make love like fairies and angels or something like this. But actually, like, here, I want to give you full permission to have animalistic sex, and it's as sacred as any kind of other form of sex, because all expression, authentic, truthful expression of a human being is sacred and contains a lot of power. So go ahead and explore that, and maybe even exaggerate in the beginning, and if it's really hard, that just try things and just see what feels good and what does not. Yeah, it takes some courage, of course.
Some courage, yeah, some heart. I'm glad you said that, because that was one thing I wanted to bring up. You know, there's a lot of misunderstanding that tantric sex is like people chanting and eye gazing, and, you know, oh, my yoni is sacred, so
candles.
Yeah, we have to be having sex like the angels in order to, you know, keep the sacredness of our genitals. And I love when you said, you know, healthy sex is not suppressed, but it's not excessive, and it's the full spectrum of who we are and our desires. And I would imagine you'd add, you know, doing that consciously.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Consciously means with a lot of presence, right? Like, with really, you know, not getting high on drugs or alcohol, but just really bringing presence and really being with each other and feeling yourself first, and then feeling each other, and then knowing that actually sex, you know, like before, you kind of touched on that a little bit, that it never looks like that porn or Hollywood type of sex that, you know, we grew up thinking or watching. Actually, sex can, it's a real opportunity to go very deep, and deep in what is. And sometimes what is not very comfortable. Sometimes what is intense emotions, is feelings which haven't been addressed. And, you know, by going into sex and by experiencing it and staying with what arises and staying and moving through it, incredible healing can happen. It's probably yeah, one of the most healing things we can ever do, to really make love in a conscious way.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. I loved everything you said. I took so many notes. And can we finish by you sharing where people can find you and your work or your book?
Yeah, sure. Very welcome to find me. I'm very active on social media, on Instagram and on Facebook. Sofia Sundari, Sofia with an F. Also on my website, I have lots of free articles on subjects of conscious sexuality, Tantra, and sacred masculinity, sacred femininity, emotions and things like this. So sofiasundari.com. I also have a free book that I wrote. You can have there are a few options. I have quite a few freebies, but you can get my book. It's called Liberation to Orgasm. It's available on Amazon, and you can also have a free chapter from my book, so you can get a test drive and see how you like it. It's been getting some incredible reviews on Amazon. So yeah, there's a few things like that. So I can share a link to that free chapter.
Yeah, we'll give that to
that's a good
our
opportunity
listeners.
to dive deeper.
Fantastic. Well, Sofia, thank you so much. This was amazing. Thank you for staying up late and being with us today. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for this interview. And we will see you at the next one. So, bye-bye.
Yeah, great to talk to you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being with us.
Okay, bye.